Hello all my JavaScript friends, this is the Virtuoid, aka Mike Smith, and this is Fun with JavaScript, our cache defense game. Well, today is July the 30th, that's when I'm recording this particular thing. This is the first recording I've done since July the 4th because of this. Yes, the Virtuoid has a new puppy. I have to get up with it. I have to clean up after it. I have to do a whole bunch of multiple things with it that, in addition to my normal job, is making life difficult to get anything done. So I've caught myself a few hours where I thought I'd record some videos. So hey, let's get started. So today we're going to be taking a look at the Arsenal controller. Now again, what is the Arsenal? The Arsenal is the controller that's going to allow us to be able to deliver weapons upon demand, whether that be a shooter weapon, a sharker weapon, or whatever. Doesn't really matter, but the controller's responsibility is to deliver whatever weapons we have on or available to us within our game. Before I begin with this, you can visit our repository at github.com/thevirtuoid/FWJS-cache-defense, where if you take a look at the main branch, you can see what our current progress is on everything. You can also email me always at thevirtuoid@gmail.com or see everything that we do on Fun with JavaScript by going to our funwithjavascript.com website. So let's get started with the Arsenal controller. So what are the kind of tests we're going to need to do? Well, the first thing we're going to need to do before we do anything else is we're going to need to be able to create our test. So I have highlighted here the E2E. So I'm going to click on create new. We're going to create a new JavaScript file. And again, because the way OBS Studio works, you're not seeing the extra windows that I have created here. So believe me, it's saying a new JavaScript file at this particular point in time, in which case we're going to say ArsenalController.js. And there we go. That's our new Arsenal controller. So let's take a look at what are some of the things we're going to need to do with the Arsenal controller. Let's go ahead and bring up that code, and I'll see you on the other side. And through the magic of television, here we are. It's our Arsenal controller. So what are the different things we want to be able to do with our controller? Well, obviously, first thing we want to do is create something. Yeah, of course. The actual creation of the controller itself. We want to be able to create a weapon. So we want to be able to go to the Arsenal controller and say, hey, Arsenal controller, give me a weapon. And it's going to give us back a weapon. If we've already created the weapon, we want to be able to get that particular weapon. In this case, we're just going to do it by ID. If we want to remove the weapon, we're going to need to remove the weapon. And when do we need to remove the weapon? Well, in case the user wants to delete it for some reason, or if possibly we want to have monsters be able to destroy the weapon. I don't know. We'll find out. And finally, we'll be able to initialize it. So let's go through each one of these particular functions on their own and see what we have. First of all, let's take a look at the creation. And there's our creation. So basically, we're going to test whether it should be able to create the object, and it should set the default. So once we create the object itself, we have a certain set of defaults, and we want to be able to test for those defaults. Let's take a look at that code. So basically, they should be able to create the object. We're just going to do a new Arsenal controller and expect the Arsenal controller to be true. Notice there's no test here for the defaults because right now for the Arsenal controller, we have no defaults. But I always include that into my controllers because there may be a time when we add defaults. So I just got a kind of a blank, test here. Is that right, TDD? No, it's not, but I got it in there anyway. So there you go. So that's basically all there really is to the creation. We just want to know if we've created an actual Arsenal controller. Next, we're going to take a look at create weapon. So let's take a look at those tests. Okay, and the create weapon, first of all, we're going to have a before each because before each one of them, we'll be able to create a new Arsenal controller. And the three tests we're going to take a look at here is we should throw an error if the weapon type is invalid. So how do we want to do this? Basically, we're going to pass a argument, which is going to be an object, and each of those key properties within the weapon type is going to be the parameters we're going to pass for the weapon. And right now, all we really care about is the type of weapon we're creating. So within this particular statement here, we're going to say, okay, when we call the create weapon, we're going to pass it a type, and that type should be a valid weapon type. And if it's not, we're going to throw some sort of particular error message. All right, that's cool. All right, where do we get the weapon types from? Well, we'll have to create that file once we get to that part. And we really haven't gotten to that part yet, so we'll get to that part shortly. All right, we should be able to create a weapon itself. So let's take a look at that code. So we're going to be able to create the weapon. And once we create the weapon, there's the type. That should be a legal type since we don't have weapon type yet. Oh, actually, I think we do. No, we do have weapon type. You know, this is code I've gotten from my main directory, but we don't have the actual file created, which we'll get to a little bit later. So if we do pass a correct type, then we should expect that the weapon has been created. And since we are also passing an ID of the weapon, we should be able to create a weapon with a specified ID. And there we go right there. And that's all we're going to test for at this particular point in time. Now, I can guarantee you, as we develop this game, once we actually get to the place where we're going to need to actually work with the weapons themselves, we're going to need to be able to do a whole lot more of the weapons. And I'm realizing that right now based upon working with, I'm right now, as of today, July the 30th, when I'm recording this video, I'm at the point now where I'm really doing some real heavy work on creating the road system. And so I've been doing a lot more creation with the road controller, which I've already talked about in previous videos. So yeah, that's the way it is. So, but for right now, all I'm really cared about is what type and the ID, and that's particularly it. And that's all we really have for that. I just realized that my screen was wrong. Let me pull it to the top there. There we go. See, this is what I was talking about right there. Constant weapon, create weapon, and then we just make sure that we test the ID is correct. Okay, get weapon. So what we want to do with get weapon, let's take a look at the code. Okay, and here's our get weapon code. Again, we're going to be able to get weapon. Basically, I want to be able to pass it some sort of ID. And when I pass it an ID, I want to be able to say, you know, that weapon exists within the realm of our arsenals, or that weapon does not exist. So we are so in our before each, we're creating a new arsenal controller, and we are creating a new weapon that is a valid weapon, in this case, test. So let's take a look at those two it statements there. It should return null if the weapon cannot be found. So that should be real simple. I just do a get weapon missing should be null. As you can tell here, this is the syntax I want to use for get weapon. Basically just passing an ID. And if it does find it, we should be able to find it. So new weapon should be equal to weapon, because I am passing the weapon ID to get weapon. So since weapon is part of the controller, I should be able, new weapon should be exactly equal to weapon itself. That's really all there is to get weapon. There really is nothing else. So what about remove weapon? Well, let's take a look at that. And there's Magic Television. Here we go. Remove weapon should be is pretty much exactly the same thing as get weapon. Basically, we're going to create ourselves a weapon in the before each, and we just have two tests here. It should return false if the weapon cannot be found. So with remove weapon, I'm just going to again pass the ID like I did with get weapon. And if it is found, it's going to remove the weapon. And how do I make sure it removes the weapon? Well, first of all, I should return a true to specify that it has removed it. And if I then do a get weapon, it should come back to be null if I try to get a weapon that does not exist. That's it. That's really all there is to remove weapon. Not much there. And so finally, let's take a look at initialize. And with initialize, there's just really only one test here. It's real simple. Basically, we're creating two different weapons, and I'm popping those weapons. When you do it, create weapon, it automatically adds it to the collection of weapons that are available to you within the controller. And to know that I've initialized, that means everything's been equaled out. Once I have added those two weapons here in create weapon, and then I initialize, I should expect not to be able to get either one of those weapons. So that will work with that. So that's really all there is to get weapon. Okay, and let's see if our test runs. So let's go up to our, where are we going? Yeah, command prompt, that's right. Let's go over to our command prompt. And from our command prompt, let's type in npx Cypress open. And we'll let it do its thing, and then once it does the thing, we'll get to our command, our Cypress prompt. All right, now we're on to Cypress, and Cypress says, you know, what do we want to do? We're going to do our E2E testing, so we're going to click on E2E testing. Choose a browser. We're going to start E2E testing in Chrome, and we'll let it do its thing. And now that it's done its thing, we have all of our specs listed here. So we're going to go to Arsenal Controller, which is what we're working with. So we'll click on Arsenal Controller. It's going to say our tests are loading. And it's going to bomb out on us. Why is it going to bomb out on us? Because if you take a look at the left, which you may not be able to read on the screen here, it basically says Webpack compilation error because it can't resolve Weapon.js. It can't resolve any of our classes. So of course our tests are not going to run without our classes. So now that we have our controller test running, let's actually start creating the shell of all of our classes so we can start adding those in one at a time. So let's flip back over to our web browser. And within our web browser, if we scroll to the very top here, it's going to say import. In fact, let's just scroll to the top here so you read it a little bit better. We're going to import from controllers ArsenalController.js. So then I'm going to create an ArsenalController.js. Let's flip over here. And we'll go down to our controllers and let's create that. And we've created an ArsenalController.js. Let's pop some code in there. There we go. Okay, we got just some simple code inside our ArsenalController.js. So let's now flip over back to our testing suite. With our testing suite, we also need inside classes, we're going to need a Weapon.js. So let's go over to our directory and go into the classes. We'll shrink the controllers and the types here. Within our classes here, let's create our JavaScript file, and we'll call that one Weapon. And let's flip over to the code here, and now let's go ahead and pop our code in there. That's just, again, it's just going to be a shell. So there's our shell. It says base game item, so we're going to have to import base game item. So let's go ahead and import base game item. That does it right there. We're going to need to put the constructor down here. Constructor args, and we're going to say super args, just so it will actually, basically this will just make so it'll actually run. Okay, so we've got the weapons, so now we're going to need weapon type. So let's create that weapon type. That's going to be in our type directory. So let me bring that up. That's going to be right here, type directory. So let's create WeaponType.js. And what I'll do for this one, I'll just throw the whole thing inside there from my original JavaScript, from the original from the original branch, the original repository. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. So let me throw that code in there real quick, because there's not a whole heck of a lot here. And yep, there it is. Okay, so that throws the code inside there. So basically we now have a type called weapon type. We've got a shooter, and we've got all the different weapon types that we can have. So that creates all of those different files. So if we now go back to our Cypress test screen, if you can tell now, our test screen actually did run. There's a whole bunch of errors inside there. Let me see if I can zoom in here. Yeah, you can see, Arsenal controller create weapon is not a function. So obviously we've not created anything. We've not done anything with our classes. So, but we've gotten our TDD now completed. We're not getting those errors saying, hey, I can't compile something because I'm missing a file. All of our files are now there. We just now need to fill them in. So let's just do this thing and pop some code inside there and see what we got. Let's first of all go back to our main JavaScript screen. We're still back on the weapon type. So let's go over to the Arsenal controller. And our first controller, basically, we got to basically do the creation part. So let me just get all that back there. Let's do creation. So we should be able to create the object itself. And that basically should have already worked because there's really nothing there. So we're not going to worry about that. So let's see. Create the weapon. So we got a lot here on the create the weapon. Do I get everything on the screen there? Not quite. All right. All right. So I'll deal with it. Anyway, so here we go. We should throw an error if weapon type is invalid. So we're going to need, obviously we're going to need the create weapon, and we're going to need the weapon error invalid weapon type message. So let's first of all go over to our Arsenal controller and let's start doing some populations. Okay, all right, so let's pop some code in there. Okay, and through the magic of television, this is our first part of our Arsenal controller where we do the create weapon. In actuality, I also kind of did the initialize because my constructor also called it excuse me, I mean, constructor called it's this initialize, so I had to go ahead and throw initialize in there too. So we kind of can't kill two birds with one stone. So here's our create weapon method, real simple. We're going to create the weapon by calling a new weapon, which we're now importing from Weapon.js. And of course, we'll have to change that here in just a second. And then we're going to save it off into our map. And we're going to save it off based upon ID. And that's going to become very important when we do the get weapon or the remove weapon. And then we're just going to return the weapon. And, you know, basically that's pretty much it. So if we were to save that, what would happen with our test screen? Let's flip over to our test screen. Okay, so my creation worked out great, but should throw an error when the weapon type is invalid. Weapon type is invalid because we cannot read properties of undefined reading message. That means we haven't defined our error message yet. So let's go back to our code. We'll zoom to the very top here. We're now inside our Weapons.js file. So let's pop our code inside Weapons.js. And that should be a very easy little code. And from the magic of television, there we are. Yay. So here's our error invalid weapon type. That should match our Arsenal. Yeah, here it is. That should match this weapon error invalid weapon type dot message. So that works out great. And so our constructor basically says if we don't have that weapon, throw the error message. Otherwise, do the super so we can get all the information for the ID and the position done, and then set the type. And that's all there really is to it in this case. So once we save this off, we should now be able to go over to our Cypress test screen and take a look at the create weapon. And sure enough, let me zoom in. I keep hitting the wrong key here. Yeah, there we go. So now our creation works and our create weapon works. Get weapon should return null if weapon not found. Well, it doesn't work because get weapon is not a function. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to throw get weapon now inside of our Arsenal controller. So there's our Arsenal controller. Let's throw get weapon in there. And through the magic of television, we're throwing get weapon in there. And it's a real simple get weapon. We're just taking a look at the weapon itself, using the get method on our map, which is located up here, to be able to grab the weapon. Notice that we're doing or null here. And the reason for that is that what the get method inside of a map returns is undefined. I personally don't like that. I like null. So I decided, because it's my design system, I decided to put null there. If you disagree, go ahead and disagree, because you're right, technically it should be undefined. But I like null better than undefined. Undefined can mean so many things, but null is specifically null. So I'm doing an or null there. So if getID becomes undefined, it's actually going to return null instead of undefined. So by saving that actually should be everything we need to be able to make our Arsenal controllers get methods to work. Let me see if I can bring those up here. Get them up on the screen. Let's scroll down to the bottom for that. There we go. Yeah, barely made it in there. Let's see if we can scroll to the very top. And that barely did make it in there. That's okay. So get weapon. Yeah, basically we're going to be returning null if the weapon cannot be found. Otherwise, we're going to return the. There it is. We're going to return the weapon itself. So that should work. So since I've saved it and Cypress automatically runs, we should be able to see it. So let's go to our Cypress test screen. We'll do the zoom type thing. Still getting some errors, but let's go to the very top there. Yep, there's our get weapon. It's working like a champ now. All right, remove weapon. That's going to be a real simple one too. So let's go back to our code. And in remove weapon, oops, hit the wrong key. Remove weapon. That one we should be able to go to the bottom for. There we go. Okay. In remove weapon, we should return false if the weapon to remove cannot be found. And we should return true if it can be found and has removed it. And then the get weapon should come back to be null for us automatically. So let's throw some code inside of our ArsenalController.js file. Let's go to the very top for that. There we go. Let's throw some code in there. And through the magic of television, there it is. Through the magic of television, there it is. And we got remove weapon. And all we're doing is we're returning the delete. And the delete function within a map will return true or false whether the operation was successful. False if it couldn't find the ID, or in this case ID. True if it could find it. So I'm just returning exactly what the map section told me to return. So that should complete that. And since we already had initialize, I think everything should now be working. Let's go to our test screen. Look at that. It sure is. Very top there. Let's see if I can highlight it. Yeah, there it is. 10 successes, no failures. So you can see, well, you really can't see there. Let's go back to the normal view. So you can see there, yeah, everything now works. So that's basically all there is to the controller. Now, once we start integrating the controller, the Arsenal in with the main system, you know, with the board and the cache and the monsters and all that, there's going to be a lot more added to it, especially the functioning of the weapons. I don't care about that. All I really cared about in this case, on this part of the TDD, is can I create a weapon, can I get the weapon, and can I remove the weapon? I don't care about anything else. Once we get to really involved with the weapons, then we will have a lot more there. So that pretty much will end this particular video. I will be creating some other videos here. I think the next one is going to be our monster controller, and if it's not, you'll find that out. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please click on the like button below. If you wish to keep informed about new content, click on the subscribe button. And as always, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Again, thank you very much for watching. This is the Virtuoid, aka Mike Smith. We'll see you later.